Are you ready to find out what is an executive assistant and how you can get started this 2026? This is going to be an in-depth series here on my YouTube channel where I walk you through step by step what an executive assistant is, the different tasks, expectations, everything that there is to know on how to be an executive assistant and how to get started with your client. So if you're excited to learn more, make sure to hit subscribe, comment below any questions you may have about this role, and I'll make sure to answer it in the next video. Now, in the last couple of years on this channel, I've been talking about how to become a virtual assistant, how to grow as a virtual assistant. And one of the things that has popped up to me is a lot of people are actually skipping virtual assistants and wanting to become an executive assistant. So I was like, you know what? Maybe it is time to make that switch. And the same thing basically has happened to my virtual assistant agency, to XU. We started out for virtual assistants, and in the last 3 years, we've actually shifted to becoming executive assistants. So I wanted to bring that over to you guys of what we learned so far in those 3 to 4 years on how we've trained a lot of the amazing executive assistants into XU. Now, first off, what is an executive assistant and how is it different from a virtual assistant, an operations manager, or just an admin assistant? Now, when it comes to being a virtual assistant, it's kind of become a specialist role where you're either an admin virtual assistant, a social media virtual assistant, you are sales, marketing, you have different kind of roles as a virtual assistant depending on your specialty and the skills that you're bringing to the table. You're usually focused on one part of your client's business and that you are able to typically grow within that role, whether that client is more project-based, part-time based, or even full-time one-on-one with a client. The key difference basically between a virtual assistant and executive assistant is when you're a virtual assistant, you're focused on tasks, which is for a lot of clients when they're just starting out with their business, they really need someone to delegate their tasks to. Now, for an executive assistant, you're now shifted to outcomes. You're really focused on making sure that if your client has given you a task, you are focused on the outcome for this task. So for example, when it comes to email management, instead of just saying, make sure that my emails are managed, the outcome is making sure like, hey, make sure that we don't miss any of the opportunities, make sure things are responded to, and anything that doesn't need our attention is deleted or archived or unsubscribed. And for an operations manager, you're really more on the overall of the business of the client. You are managing multiple of the other people who are in charge of the outcomes within the business. So for an executive assistant, I always give the example of the movie The Devil Wears Prada, where essentially you have Emily, who is the main executive assistant, who really is just focused on just the client, Miranda in this case. And of course, you have Anne Hathaway's character, who is really more of the virtual assistant, focused on just the tasks and making sure that they get done right. Other key changes of being an executive assistant is, again, the first one is the tasks to outcome thinking. The next one is essentially from waiting on being given a task, you're now doing a lot of the tasks. So you've observed enough of what happens in your executive's day-to-day, in your team's day-to-day, that you're able to start implementing or start taking action without a lot of instruction or without a lot of pointing out. And the third one is that you are focused not just on the business of the client, you're focused on the client. That's why you are an executive assistant. You are the executives, the CEO, COO, whoever it is, you are their assistant. The goal for you is to hopefully become their second brain. And what that essentially means is you understand the way that they think, that they talk, that they would make decisions, that they would create things to the point where you can start anticipating their needs. You can start already controlling a little bit of the things of how you know that they would be reacting. As a really perfect example, my own executive assistant, just yesterday, she knew I was a little bit tired and a little bit loopy, so she actually canceled the rest of my meetings in the afternoon because she was already anticipating. Again, the key word here is you've learned to anticipate and look at the patterns of your client. She was already anticipating that if I continued on with my evening meetings, I would be a little bit more tired today, given that I'm creating a ton of content today. Now, a few personality types that you definitely need as an executive assistant. The first one is one that I just mentioned, is just being detail oriented, is you're watching for patterns for your clients of like, oh, if this happens enough, I know my client would react this way. If this happens, I know that this would happen in the business because I've been here long enough. Now, it's also making sure that when you are filing things, when you're storing things, when you're managing different sets of data for your client, that it is understandable enough. So detail oriented isn't just being like watchful on every single thing. It's making sure that it also makes sense for whoever else might receive the report, who might see that asset or that document that you're creating. Another personality type, and this is one that is always the requested thing whenever I'm doing sales calls with potential clients, is they're really looking for someone who is proactive. Now, proactive is when you see something and you know that something needs to get done, is taking action. It's basically not having much of a buffer between overthinking and actually just getting it done. It's getting to the point where you are confident enough to be able to take action on different things. Now again, this is not overnight. This will, take time. If this was 3 years ago with my assistant, she would not have known to make those decisions with me. But these are one of the things that you will start growing towards. Another typical personality type of an executive assistant is someone who is professional. Yes, you are hopefully becoming the second brain of your client, which means that you will understand some personal aspects of their life, but it's also keeping things professional to the point where you show up nicely. You wear a top that's nice even though you're just on Zoom. Even if you just wear pajama shorts in the bottom, that's okay. But the point is you show up professionally. You show up at a different level for your client. You speak with them clearly and with the goal essentially of understanding rather than kind of messing things up for them. And you're also keeping in mind that because you are the client's executive assistant, you're essentially an extension of them. You are, if you're the only one on a call and with the rest of the team, and because your client's sick, they will look to you as an example of how the client would react, on how they would say things or do things, because again, you are an extension of your boss or your client. Now, what does a day in the life of an executive assistant actually look like? Now, I will kind of walk you through what my own assistant's day in the life is. I think I have a more in-depth video of her somewhere on my YouTube channel. Hopefully I can pop it up, or she can pop it up rather. But essentially her day in her life is she wakes up, she does her personal habits, and then she actually goes into, when she starts work, is she makes sure that all of the inboxes are clean. She make sure that the tasks are set up for the day. She then reviews her day before. So then by the time that we have our daily sync, which is always 11 o'clock, is she already has the agenda of what are the things that we need to discuss for the day, what are her focuses for the day, and anything that might be still pending that she needs either my approval for, and then of course asking me for what my focus is for the day so she can align herself with my focus. And that's basically it. That's kind of the only touch point that we have, unless I have other tasks that I give her over WhatsApp. And then she makes sure to work on the priority tasks first. She starts writing it all down. We have the same theme days, basically, where in a week we have kind of the same types of tasks that we'll be working on. So for example, Mondays are usually admin days where we check on everyone. Tuesdays and Thursdays are client days where we check in on our clients. Basically at this point, our client success managers. Wednesdays are our content days where we map out what the content should be looking like for the week ahead, or even 2-3 weeks ahead. And then Fridays is usually a wrap-up day of any open loops that we had at the beginning of the week, making sure that they're closed up by the end of that week. And then basically my assistant repeats this day to day, again, following that kind of rhythm that we've already set out. And then eventually wrapping up her day around 7 p.m. Unless I have a very important meeting that she knows I might need her help with, she'll usually wrap up her day around 6 or 7. And that's basically it. If I'm bugging her, if I'm sending her messages at like 2 a.m., because sometimes I'm still up at 2 a.m., she knows to not respond to it until the next day, so then I don't feel guilty about sending her stuff. And it's also making sure that for me, I am kind of still in flow and not having to store things in my head just because I wanted to send her something and I forgot because I didn't want to send her something. She knows not to respond even if she does see that chat. Now, how can you actually grow in this kind of role? Like, what are the ways to look forward to when you are an executive assistant? Now, the first path of this is that you are doing things with your client. You're very much there for their day-to-day. They're managing you. They're making sure that you're working on the right things. They're delegating a lot of things with you. And the next is then doing it for them. So I gave you guys a couple of examples of what doing for them looks like. Is you've seen enough the patterns, you've built enough systems, you've built enough the assets and the templates that instead of them sending out an email, you do it for them. Instead of them moving them a calendar invite because they got sick, you're doing it for them. So you already have a good grasp on what their day-to-day looks like, that you can start doing things for them. And the top tier stage is essentially managing them. So it's doing with them, doing it for them, and now it's managing your client. And what this basically looks like is, depending on the priorities and goals set within the company, is you're making sure that your client is always focused on those things. And for a lot of the time, what that looks like with me and my assistant is I'll have a bajillion ideas in a day, and when we go over them the next day, she makes sure that I am still focused on what we said our main goals were. We set them up every year and then we break it down to quarters and to months. So she is always looking at my tasks, looking at what my focus has been in the last couple of weeks or days, and making sure that I am managed enough to stay focused on the goal that we've set. And of course, future roles for an executive assistant is essentially most executive assistants either become a chief of staff for the client's business, essentially managing the rest of the main admin team, or basically an operations head. Another role that an executive assistant can go into is essentially someone who's more of a project management role, or even a client success manager, again, depending on who their client was. Or if you do stick to being an executive assistant for your client in the long term, is that you are able to grow in a lot of the ways that your client is growing, and they're basically bringing you over to new businesses that they're doing or new projects that they're doing, and you're growing with them. Now, as you come to the part of the video, you're like, yeah, maybe this is something that I want to go into. How do I actually get started? And there's 4 main ways that you can get started on it, like right off the bat, right after this video. The first one is clarify your resume. Now, whether or not you've had executive assistant experience before, you can kind of translate some of the roles that you've done with previous clients, with previous jobs in being an executive assistant. So if you've managed clients before, if you've done some project management experience, if you've done some admin work even in the past, those are things that you can easily translate to being an executive assistant. And again, the shift here is instead of managing the business, you're managing your clients. So you are doing the tasks that you once did for a business into now translating it to how does it work for just my client, to the point where I am managing them. Next is you can look at job listings from either people who are looking directly for executive assistants or executive assistant agencies like my own, 2XU, and start being familiar with what those roles and responsibilities are, so then you know how to tweak and adjust your resume so that it fits and makes sense. Make sure that you don't make up things just to add to your resume just because you've seen it a lot. Make sure that you've actually had experience, because you will be asked during the interview. Then it's just going through the process of applying, following up, hopefully getting the job over and over again. But your main thing is you want to keep in mind that you want to build out your portfolio. So your portfolio doesn't have to be graphics or things that you written down. Your portfolio is your collection of wins. Like, what were the ways that you helped your client? Like taking screenshots, basically, whenever your client praises you for something, getting testimonials from them. Because then as you start building that up, even if you stick with this client for 4, 5, 7 years, at least you have kind of a bank of feedback of the things that you can do better on, and essentially kind of just a way for you to either get your next job or your next kind of work. And the key thing for you here is essentially upskill. Now, what I mean by upskill is if you've never done an executive assistant work before, a key thing that you really have to keep in mind, you always have to keep growing. You always have to keep evolving, because your client is also evolving. So what this looks like is going through videos like this on YouTube. It could be going through courses, getting certifications, joining communities like mine, which is the AI for Virtual Assistant community, where I break down how you can start working with AI as an assistant, and essentially constantly trying out new tools, trying out new skills that you can start applying to the work that you do. Now, if you guys liked this video and you want to see more, make sure to hit the thumbs up button right there. Again, comment below any questions you might have when it comes to getting started as an assistant. I would love to know, because I would base future videos on those. And if you still haven't yet, make sure to hit the subscribe button right there so you don't miss any of my videos every Sunday on how to grow your career, especially with AI. And if you're more leaning towards starting your own business or growing your own business, I do have a second channel for you right here, and you can check out the latest video right here. Hope you guys have an amazing day, and with that, small steps matters, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!